Hello, everybody. This is not my final Oscar nomination predictions. Those should be coming immediately after this video. Um, but for 2024, I've decided I want to try to be a little bit more active on the YouTube and maybe be trying to be not a content creator per se, but try to do a little bit more creative stuff, not just monthly Oscar predictions. I'm no longer doing From Pixels to Pictures, for those who are wondering. Uh, and so I was trying to think about what kind of videos things I can do, and right now I am in the process of putting together my final Oscar nomination predictions. And what I do is a few weeks before the nominations are announced, the Academy website releases this giant list of all the eligible movies, and like a crazy person, I just make this giant chart of every eligible movie, and then I go one by one and eliminate them until I have what you'll see on the next video, which is this spreadsheet of a whole bunch of like the top 40 in every category. So it's pretty ridiculous. I'm on the spectrum. This is one of my like special fixations or whatever. But it should be helpful in determining the nominations. However, this is not that video. This is not the final nominations. This is something that occurred to me a couple years ago, and I tried to do it and it didn't quite work, but I thought I would. Basically, there are 321 movies that are eligible for Academy Awards in most categories. And so, the idea occurred to me, what if I used an online randomizer to predict what the nominations will be? So, the gist behind this video is that I put every single one of the eligible movies into a randomizer for each category, and just to remind you, every single one of these hypothetical nominations is possible. Like, it's something that you can vote for. I don't know how many of these are going to happen, but I mean, part of why I wanted to do this was just sort of to highlight the amount of movies that are eligible, because of course there's the top awards contenders that you all know, and then there's movies that you've heard of but you know are not coming anywhere near the Oscars, like the blockbusters or just dumb genre movies that came and went. And there's also movies that you've never heard of, and even if you've been really, really focused in the awards attention, even I have never heard of some of these movies. And so that this will show you the amount of movies that are eligible for awards. So I started in the category of Best Costume Design. You'll see that in a second. I decided to not do any. Most of the below the line categories have short lists, and that's 10 to 5 movies. And when you put that in a randomizer, it's not as fun. Because this is such a wide field, it's fun. So I'm going to take you through this. I asked the randomizer to give me 5 movies for Best Costume Design, and here's what it picked. The Color Purple, Francine Jameson Tanchuk. The Lesson, Sabine Babas. Mother, Bina Dager and Jarina San Juan. Rose, Anne Dorth Eskildsen. And Wish, no credited costume designer. Okay, so first of all, I think this is absolutely crazy. This is the first category that I did, and I was shocked that The Color Purple showed up. Like, an actual awardsy movie showed up. What are the chances of that happening? And that's not the only time that this happened. Stay tuned for that later. But that's one of those, even a broken clock is right twice a day. The other movies, Lesson, The Mother, and Rose are all, like, you can see from that, oh, these are contending? Wish, I think, is kind of cool, though, because I decided, I will say, as I went through both costume design and production design, I made the decision that documentaries, if I got a documentary, I wouldn't count that. But animated films are fair game as long as the characters do wear costumes, which they don't always do in animated movies. Sometimes they're about animals. But Wish, yeah, that would actually be kind of an inspired nomination. If it happened, it's obviously not going to. So, yeah, but you can see just the wide range of opinions, the wide range of movies here. You've got something like Color Purple that is a legitimate contender in this category. You've got something like Wish, which is might be a cool in an alternate universe to get on, but it's not going to happen. And then you've got The Lesson, Mother, Rose. These are all contemporary movies, but work does go into deciding what clothes are selected and deciding how, because the clothes do inform the characters. So even though you may not think about costume design if you happen to watch one of these movies, it is a part of the story. So just that's why I wanted to single these movies out and why I specifically read out the names of the costume designers for these. So next up, I asked the randomizer to pick 5 nominees for Best Production Design, and I got At the Gates, production designer Andrew Kim and Frida Olivia, set decorator Kim Brukal. The End We Start From, production designer Laura Ellis Cricks, set decorator Fiona Albro. Meg 2, The Trench, production designer Chris Lowe, set decorator Maudie Andrews. Poor Things, production designer Shona Heath, James Price, set decorator Zuza Mihalik. And Prisoner's Daughter, production designer Pele Cruden, set decorator Linnea Crabtree. So, again, this time I was shocked. I was like, okay, someone's pulling my leg here. What are the chances that I would get Poor Things? Now, this didn't happen for every category, just that I got one awardsy movie in there. But it is kind of fun if you look at the range again of some of these movies, because At the Gates is just set at a big mansion, and Prisoner's Daughter is there's some jail stuff in there, but nothing too fancy. Some of these movies, and I'm not going to shout out that one in particular, but there are some movies where you look at the trailer and you look at the poster and you're like, how did this become eligible for Oscars? Because it looks like a student production that somehow was able to play in just enough theaters. Like, they really must have pushed this to make it Oscar eligible, because it looks like it was made for like a budget of $7. And okay, yeah. End We Start From has some nice apocalypse stuff, and so does Meg 2 in a sense. But yeah, I mean, if we're asking which one stands the best shot of getting an Oscar nomination, it's Poor Things. Also, you will see that most of the movies that were picked from the randomizer only get 1 nomination. So if this were any type of real award scenario, we would all be scratching our heads at how a movie can get 1 nomination, nothing else. Yeah, but just wanted to point out that these nominations are possible. Best Cinematography. Now, here's where things get interesting. The nominees are Chang-an, no credited DP. The Hill, Christopher Kimlin. The League, Henry Adabongo and Angel Barrueta. Livia's House, Cody Martin. And Occupied City, Leonard Hillig. I'm definitely mispronouncing some of these names. So, we have 2 documentaries here. And I did kind of question whether or not I should include them, at least The League, because that documentary is largely archival footage, but there are 2 credited DPs, so I decided to count that. And then we have The Hill, another baseball movie. We have Livia's House, which, another small movie that, like, if you look on IMDb scores, like, some of these movies almost nobody saw. And then, Chang-an, we got an animated movie in here, which has some nice looking cinematography, as judging from the trailer. So, yeah, I love when you ask the randomizer to do things, and it showcases how many documentaries there are in a given year, how many animated films there are, because in a lot of these categories, there's great representation for animated films and documentaries, way more than you would ever see at the Oscars. And obviously, these nominations are not going to happen in real life, but it is cool to just acknowledge the fact that there's other types of movies that do commendable work too. Best Film Editing, the randomizer selected Book Club, The Next Chapter, edited by Doc Krotzer. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, edited by Andrew Buckland and Michael McCusker. She Came to Me, edited by Sabine Hoffman. They Cloned Tyrone, Syra Hayter. And They Shot the Piano Player, Arnau Quills. Yeah, so, nothing too crazy here. I mean, Academy Award nominee in Book Club. You want to imagine that. Indiana Jones is at least an action movie, so is They Cloned Tyrone. They Shot the Piano Player is a cool nominee because it's animated, but it's an animated documentary, so there's like some nice editing work going on there. Also, it's funny enough that the way I did the randomizer, I just assigned a number to each of the movies, and They Cloned Tyrone and They Shot the Piano Player, as you might imagine, were right next to each other alphabetically, so that was just the randomizer selecting two numbers that were right next to each other. A little bit weird. So, yeah, I don't know how many of these movies you've seen. So these aren't as low profile as some of the others, but, you know, fine editing being singled out. Okay, now we get to the screenplays, and this is where things really get fun. So, I took the films, I took the 321 eligible films, and I divided them into original and adapted screenplays. And the ratio that I got was 202 original screenplays and 119 adapted. And I'll just say right now, the adapted screenplay nominees are Blue Giant, Country of Blind, The Flash, Nefarious, and Shazam! Fury of the Gods. So yeah, 202 to 119, and that ratio is not as extreme as it is in many years. It's funny, people always say that Hollywood's out of ideas, Hollywood's never making anything original, but that's not true. Hollywood is making original movies all the time, they're just not as successful. And the adapted screenplay, even though it's there's less films, there's also kind of less quality films because a lot of them are big genre movies, blockbuster sequels, reboots that have no shot at getting nominated, as evidenced by the fact that there are 2 DC superhero movies in this particular lineup, as well as a Blue Giant, which is an anime adaptation, Country of Blind, which I think based on an H.G. Wells story, and Nefarious, which I don't even know what that's based on. None of these have any shot at getting nominated. And if we look at original screenplay, we have Amanda, Cassandro, Joan B's I Am a Noise, Migration, and a song film by Kishibashi Omayari. So 2 documentaries in original screenplay. And this is partially why there is that big discrepancy, because there's a lot of documentaries, and most of the time a documentary will fall under original, even though there are a handful of documentaries this year, like Occupied City and Stamped from the Beginning, that are technically adapted. But yeah, that does sort of leave room for that. I don't believe a documentary has ever got nominated for screenplay. I don't know if it ever will, but technically speaking, there are screenplays involved. And I don't really know if there's anything much more to say. Migration's a fun nominee, I guess, but yeah, nothing too special, nothing too close to getting nominated at the actual Oscars. But now we get to the acting categories. So for Best Supporting Actor, the nominees are Riz Ahmed, Fingernails, Morgan Freeman, A Good Person, Peter Guinness, The Boys in the Boat, Ben Schwartz, Renfield, and Spencer Wilding, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. So let me tell you the way that the acting categories work. Basically, on the Academy website where they have the list of eligible releases, they also list every actor who is in the movie, and they list it by gender. They don't make specifications for lead or supporting, which is how someone like Lakeith Stanfield can be campaigned in lead and nominated in supporting. It's based on what the directors do. And for the purposes of my list making, I take every nominee, I just do a quick little check. If I haven't seen the movie, I haven't heard of it, I just look up the Wikipedia or IMDb page and I try to see, I think this person's lead, I think this person's supporting. And this is not an exact science. Someone who's seen some of these movies might argue with me about these placements, but for me, this is what works. And in years past, I've done a thing where I put an asterisk next to a name of it could conceivably get nominated in either category. I didn't do that this year. I understand that, like, conceivably Lily Gladstone could get into supporting actress, or that Ryan Gosling could get into lead actor, but I'm not gonna bankrupt on that, because once you start thinking about if these actors could get nominated in a different category, then it just becomes a whole can of worms. So if something like that happens, I'm just let it happen. I'm not going to try to predict it beforehand. And in regards to the supporting actor nominees, I'm kind of stunned that they're not too crazy. I mean, Morgan Freeman is getting one of his biggest roles in a long time. Riz Ahmed is a previous Oscar nominee, and Ben Schwartz is well known. I don't think his role in the film is that big, because some movies have 20 actors credited who are eligible for awards attention. I imagine that's the way it works. If an actor is in that list, then they're eligible for awards attention. And it's funny, sometimes the bigger awards contenders will just submit a few people, and these are the people that are actually submitted by the studio for nominations. But then the movies that don't have any chance of getting nominated for acting Oscars will just have the entire cast there. And so that's how Spencer Wilding, for example, who probably has a very small role in Dungeons & Dragons, was eligible for this. At this rate, yeah, it's an interesting lineup. It's interesting that these are the names the randomizer chose. Out of 907, I don't know if I said that, but 907 eligible supporting actor contenders from this year, these were the 5 that were chosen. And I have spent a lot of time on supporting actor, I'm aware of that, and that's partially because there's not nearly as much to say about Best Supporting Actress. I have Jane Curtin in Jules, Susan Daham in Once Within a Time, Kaeun Kim in Cocaine Bear, Leah Purcell in Shada, and Erica Tazel in Big George Foreman. Honestly, this is just really boring. It's random, but not random in a super fun way. These are 5 actresses that are not getting nominated for the Oscar, and it's not, yeah, one of them's in Cocaine Bear, but it's not one of the craziest nominations we'll see, so I'm sort of going to skip past that. Easily my favorite nomination that the whole randomizer selected was in Best Actor. The nominees are Vin Diesel in Fast X, Michael Fassbender in Next Goal Wins, John Goriziala in Unicorn Wars, Michael B. Jordan in Creed 3, and Zola Mariduena in Blue Beetle. I love the Vin Diesel nomination so much. This is what happens when you ask a randomizer to predict things. And it's funny, I was actually telling someone else about this experiment I was doing, and I brought up the fact that the randomizer selected Vin Diesel, and they had this great reaction of, I didn't know Vin Diesel was still acting, if that's what you call it. So I just find it funny because Vin Diesel has said publicly that he wants a Fast and Furious movie to be nominated for Oscars, and the randomizer thinks that he should be nominated. Outside of that, Fassbender and Michael B. Jordan are maybe kind of in the consideration, but not really. Ooh, I want to highlight this nomination for John Goriziala, which is a vocal performance in the animated film Unicorn Wars. Some animated movies will submit the cast, some animated movies will list the actors, the voice actors, who to be eligible for acting consideration. And other animated movies will not. And even if it doesn't actually say on their FYC page, on this list of eligible releases, at least this year, most of the animated contenders, unless they're silent movies where the characters don't talk, most animated contenders will list the voice actors. Except for the Netflix movies. I don't know why this is, but the Netflix animated movies this year, such as Nimona, Chicken Run, Leo, do not list the voice actors where the other animated films do. And I don't know why. Maybe just Netflix does not respect animation as much or considers animation an entirely separate thing. And I don't know why I'm complaining. It feels stupid to, because obviously it's a very, very uphill battle for a voice actor for an animated film to get an Oscar nomination. It's never happened before. But I'm just a little bit frustrated that Chloe Moretz's incredible vocal performance in Nimona is not even eligible for awards consideration. Meanwhile, the entire cast of Paw Patrol is eligible for Oscar consideration. Yeah, something about that just doesn't seem fair. And so moving on to Best Actress, we have Dara Emery in Jacob the Baker, Melora Hardin in Golden Vanity, Salma Hayek Pinault in Magic Mike's Last Dance, Rose McEwen in Blue Jean, and Helen Mirren in Golda. So according to IMDb, 10 people have seen Golden Vanity. And that's what I mean. Some of these movies are like, how on earth is this a contender? Like, I could not even find a trailer for that movie. The picture that I use is literally the poster. That's how low profile some of these movies are. Outside of that, yeah, this is a real random sort of nominees. I guess Rose McEwen has kind of gotten some notices. So has Helen Mirren. That movie's at least a makeup contender. I don't know. Again, not a whole lot to say about this. Not a lot of excitement going on. But where there is excitement is Best Director, and I want to highlight this. So the nominees are Stephen Cable Jr. in Stephen Cable Jr. for Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, Ava DuVernay for Origin, Savannah Leaf for Earth Mama, Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall, and David Yates for Pain Hustlers. Now, it's kind of cool that Justine Triet is here for Anatomy of a Fall, considering that direction is kind of in consideration for the Oscar. And depending on how much stock you put in Frances Fisher, Ava DuVernay for Origin might kind of be in the conversation too. I don't know. But what's funny, and no, it's not funny, but it's notable that we have 3 out of these 5 are women, and also 3 out of these 5 are people of color. And you might think, well, it's a randomizer, this isn't any kind of official ranking. Yes, but the fact that it's pulling from 321 directors, and the randomizer chose such a diverse lineup, proves that diversity is becoming more and more accepted, and we're seeing all sorts of new directors and exciting new voices tell these stories. Like, if these were the only 3 women making movies this year, then the randomizer would be hard-pressed to find them, but there's a lot of great diversity, and so it's just exciting to see that the randomizer is sort of reflecting. That's another way to look at it, that the randomizer is not necessarily representing the best of the year, but it is maybe painting a better picture of the year as a whole, and what the year looked like when you take all that it has to offer. I'm recording this late at night. This is probably not the most coherent, but hopefully that this comes through. It's in terms of painting a broad picture of what 2023 in film had in store. And so, finally for Best Picture, and I'm using a different graphic for this because it's 10 nominees, we have The Blackening, Bobby Wine, The People's President, Brother, Cocaine Bear, House Party, Migration, Orlando, My Political Biography, The Promised Land, Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, Yoshiki Under the Sky. So, how crazy is it that 3 movies nominated for Best Picture, Cocaine Bear, Migration, and Transformers, all have nominations in other categories? That is insane because there hasn't really been a whole lot of overlap until Best Picture. And it's kind of funny to think that if this were any sort of real-world scenario, we'd be like, oh, Transformers is winning because that has the director nomination. Obviously, this is not a real-world scenario, and I don't think any of these movies have any shot whatsoever. The Promised Land, I think, might be in the top 40, as we'll see when I post my thing. But, yeah, it's... And I will say, looking at this list, there's not, like, a ton of super great movies in here, but it is an interesting list. I didn't, like... It's not like I ran the randomizer again after this to see what other movies it picked, but... Oh, and I do want to mention, in case you don't know, the Best Picture lineup is a little bit different than the other lineups, because whereas there's 321 movies available for most categories, Best Picture had 266 because certain films did not meet the standards of wanting to be for Best Picture. And so, like, there's this whole diversity and inclusion thing that most movies met, but some movies didn't. And it's interesting because movies like Oppenheimer, that are largely about white people, apparently had enough people of color working behind the scenes to still qualify for Best Picture. But movies like The Marvels or The Creator, and these movies starred people of color, but apparently there weren't enough people of color behind the scenes for it to be a Best Picture nomination. And that's interesting because you'd think that on-screen representation is the best kind, but apparently it doesn't mean anything if you're not backing it up with enough people backstage. So, okay, that was a very long and very rambly, but yeah, let me know if you enjoy this. Let me know if you'd like me to make other fun stuff like this. And yeah, this is going out a few days before the Oscar nominations, so we'll see if the randomizer gets any of these right. Take care.